All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Let us begin by thanking our sponsors, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Elul, Avraham and Shaindy Kelman, for dedicating all of the Shiur and Midrashos this month in memory of their parents. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamas will have an Aliyah and the family a Nechama. We thank our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Milt and Melanie Gertner. Oh, I'm sorry. For Milt and Melanie Gertner, for Refuah Shalema, for Shoshana Tova Bas Mindalea. We hope that she, together with Kol Chole Yisrael, will have a complete and enduring refuah. Excellent. All right, so with that, let us begin. We have an incredible sugya. Good, better, good. We have an incredible sugya, Meretz Hashem, ahead of us today. And today we have the great zechus to begin the sugya of Esrog. So we'll see with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Lamed Hey 35. We are picking up at the Mishnah on Lamed Dalid Amud Beis 34b. The Mishnah says as follows: Esrog hagozel v'hayovish pasol. If an esrog is stolen or dried out, it is pasol. So shalasher, again, we'll go through each of these. We'll go through each of these things in the Gemara. Shalasher v'shal iranidachas. Once again, if it's an esrog of an asherah tree, avodah zarah, iranidachas, a city which has been condemned because the residents have worshipped avodah zarah, pasol. Such an esrog is pasol. Shal arla, pasol. Remember again, arla refers to fruits that grow in the first 3 years. So the Torah Kedosha tells us that any fruits that grow in the first 3 years, one is not permitted to go ahead and get hana, get benefit from it. Remember again, with vines, there's an additional concept of karem revai, but leaving that aside for now, if you use the esrog of arla, ultimately again it is pasol. Shal truma tmeya, pasol. If you use an esrog of truma tameya, so what's truma tameya? Truma, which has become tameh. Remember again, truma is the tithe separated out to be given to the kohen. If for some reason that truma becomes tameh, so again, remember, you could have an esrog that was truma. If the truma became tameh or tameya, then that esrog would be precluded from use. Again, we'll discuss in the Gemara why all of these things are asur. Actually, if you take a look at Rashi says, actually, we don't have to, let's see. The Gemara says, Shal truma tahora, lo yitol. What happens if you have an esrog of truma tahora? Suppose to just see how this works. I'm a farmer, I'm an Yisrael. I give truma, I happen to have an esrog grove, so I go ahead and give truma to the kohen. Truma tahora. So the Mishnah says, ideally, lo yitol. The kohen should not use, or no one should use an esrog of truma tahora. Ve'im natal, but if you used it, kosher. Ultimately, again, you have fulfilled the mitzvah. We'll see in the Gemara why. Shel demai. What about an esrog of demai? So remember again, what's demai? Demai is produce which belongs to an am haaretz, which belongs to someone who's just simply unlearned. So remember again, there was a general concern in the eyes of Chazal that people who were am haaretz, people who were just unlearned, and individuals who were just ignorant, did not properly tithe. So in general, the halacha is that when you purchase produce from an am haaretz, you have to retithe that produce. So what about an esrog of demai? So Beis Shammai posts, and Beis Shammai says you can't use it, it's possible. Beis Hillel machshir, and Beis Hillel says it's kosher. Good. So I'll say, Shal Meiser Sheni b'Yushalayim lo yitol, v'im natal kosher. Another interesting case. What happens, remember, what's Meiser Sheni? Meiser Sheni is the tithe that the Yisrael goes ahead and separates, but halacha l'maisa, he has to eat it in Yerushalayim. So it's yours to eat, but it must be consumed in Yerushalayim. So what about Meiser Sheni? So the Mishnah says, ideally, you would not use an esrog of Meiser Sheni. But if you took it, the imnatal, kosher, it works. Fine. So we'll say, interestingly enough, the first part of the Mishnah is all about the esrog with different types of status. And so the shaila is, depending on the status, can you be yotze with the esrog? The last part of the Mishnah now speaks about disqualifications in the guf, in the body of the esrog itself. Also, chazozis al rubo, if a chazozis appeared on the majority of the esrog. So take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says over here, also chazozis. Chazozis. Kamin is actually interesting how Rashi defines chazozis. Kamin abu ba'os dakos. What are abu ba'os? So we'll say abu ba'os are boils. right? Abu Ba'os, Rashi uses this lashon ultimately again by the makas, right? Abu Ba'os, boils. So just understand, it's not really, I don't know why the mission, because boil makes it sound like a blister or something. So a chazozis, as we're going to see, means any type of growth on the esrog itself. But often, the truth is, it does look like a boil. Everyone's seen this on estrogim because they're not uncommon, which it looks like just like a boil, like a little bit of an inflated part of the estrog on the side. Not a bump, but something a bit more pronounced. Okay, we'll see. We'll discuss more in the Mishnah, in the Gemara. Excuse me. So also chazazis also chazazis al rubo. So case number one is what happens if you have this boil, and again, we'll define the parameters of this case. You have this boil on the majority of the esrog, al rubo, or notla pitmaso, or the pitum was removed. Pitum was removed. So remember again, we'll discuss this as well. Pitum removed when? Pitum removed how? Niklaf. Niklaf means the esrog was peeled. Now again, peeled doesn't literally mean that the entire esrog was peeled. It means that part of the peel came off. Nistok, the esrog was split. Again, we'll define the parameters of all of this. Nikev, it was perforated. V'chaser kolshu, or it's missing any part of it. Pasul. Ultimately, again, all of these are disqualifications within the esrog itself. Also, chazozis amiyuto. What happens if a chazozis, a boil, is only on a small part of the esrog amiyut, or natal uktso, or the ukat was removed. Remember again, the ukat is the bottom. Remember, the esrog is not attached to the tree by the pitum, right? When an esrog is growing, the pitum is actually facing down. The esrog is attached by its bottom to the tree. That bottom, there's like a stem-like protrusion on the bottom of the esrog. That's called the ukats. What happens if the ukats was removed? Notal uktso, or nikav v'lochas, or it was pierced, but it's not missing anything. So in other words, it was pierced, but there's no part of the esrog that is deficient. Kosher. Ultimately, again, these esrogim will be kosher. Esrog akushi. Now, we'll say is interesting. What's an esrog akushi? Rashi says sheba me'eretz kush v'shacharhu. It comes from Kush, is Ethiopia. It comes from Ethiopia and it's black. A black esrog is pasul. Now we'll discuss why exactly a black esrog is pasul, if that's the way it grows in Ethiopia. We'll discuss this. V'hayara kakarsi. What about an esrog that is as green as a leek? Rabbi Meir Machsher, Rabbi Huda Polsa. Rabbi Meir says it's kosher. Rabbi Huda says it's pasul. Now both say, now again, we're going to discuss green esrogim as well, because it is a riveting sugya about green esrogim. We already saw a little bit about this before. What's the concern with green? What's the general concern with green? Is excellent. Is that does it represent a certain lack of immaturity? Right? That's what we're concerned about. In other words, if you know you have a fully formed esrog that is green, we're going to see that's not really machlokes. Now, whether or not that's the most hadar or not, that's a different discussion. But if you know for sure that this esrog has achieved its full growth potential, the fact that it's green will not be a disqualifying factor. The issue why the Gemara is bringing up Yarok Karsi over here in a machlokes is a concern. Rabbi Meir says it's fine. Rabbi Huda says we have to be concerned that maybe it didn't reach full maturity. So I'm saying it's not as much a din in color as much as it's a din in what the color represents. Shir esrog akaton. What's the smallest shir? In other words, what's the smallest size of a kosher esrog? Rabbi Meir Omer ke'egos. Rabbi Meir says the size of a nut. Rabbi Huda Omer kebeitz. Rabbi Huda says no, it's got to be at least the size of an egg. Ubegadol. And I both say, what's the ceiling, right? What's the upper limit on the size of an esrog? Kadeshi yochaz shnayim biyado div Rabbi Huda. So Rabbi Huda says the esrog could be no bigger. In other words, the biggest it could be is that you could hold two esrogim in your hand at once. Excuse me. Sorry. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Yossi says, afilu echod b'shtei yadav. Rabbi Yossi says the esrog could be so big that even if you need two hands to hold one esrog, ultimately, again, that is still going to be kosher. But remember, again, we saw this machlokes earlier. What is this about? What's driving this machlokes? So remember, again, the concern is, since sometimes you're going to have to go ahead and what? Switch around, right? Move stuff around in your hands. So ultimately, So ultimately, again, Rabbi Huda was concerned that if the esrog is too big, you're going to inevitably end up dropping something and potentially invalidating something of your daled minim. Rabbi Yossi ultimately was not as concerned about that particular issue. Good. So I'll say this is the Mishnah. What's really exciting, by the way, about the sugis, I just want to point out, if you notice, it's pretty much one Mishnah per min. That's the way it works, right? Each one of the daled minim, it's really beautiful. Each one of the daled minim gets its own Mishnah, and halacha l'maisa, and that Mishnah contains pretty much all of the relevant halachas to that particular min. The Gemara, of course, then goes on to expound on this, but this is the Mishnah of esrog. This is the Mishnah of esrog. So anything and everything you want to know about esrog is contained in this Mishnah. Beautiful. Says the Gemara, both at top of Lamed Hey. Really beautiful Gemara. Tan Rabbanan, pre-eitz hadar. So I'll say, so the pasuk says, when speaking about esrog, says pre-eitz hadar. I will say, I just want to point out something very interesting. Today Gimel Elul is the yard site of Rav Avraham Yitzchak Cohen Cook, and I saw something amazing last night. Everything is just incredible. Rav Cook, amongst his many svarim, wrote a sefer called Oros HaTshuva. Oros HaTshuva. He wrote a number of sefer called Oros, lights. Right. So Oros HaTshuva is about tshuva. You could go to Rav Cook's house, right? It's right off Ben Yehuda. I know no one knows where that is in Yerushalayim. It's a small little pedestrian area where they have some coffee shops, right? So Rav Cook's house, Beit Harav, is right there. And I want to tell you something amazing. It's funny. I went there maybe for the first time, maybe 5-6 years ago when I was there when I took my family there. I'd never been there before. And they have some of Rav Cook's manuscripts on display. There's something absolutely amazing. You look at Rav Cook's manuscripts, there are no erasures. Now, normally when you look at manuscripts, right, you see this, you see writing over here, a little erasure, some writing in the margins. In Rav Cook's manuscripts, original manuscripts, this is when he was writing down these ideas, it's just free flowing. There's no erasure. So that summer I was staying in not far from the German colony. And I davened every morning in the same place as Rabbi Weinreb. And I asked him about this. And he told me, the most striking thing is Rav Cook was miyuchad like this. That such clarity of thought, that literally, again, most of us, I have a thought, I write it down, and then I have to refine it. Rav Cook had such clarity of thought that what came out of his mind and what went onto the paper was literally the finished product. It's absolutely amazing. So I just want to share with you something amazing on this hashgacha and everything. In the introduction to Oros HaTshuva, listen, and then we have to get back to the daf. In the introduction to Oros HaTshuva, listen to what Rav Cook says. Listen to what he writes. This is the opening part of Oros HaTshuva. He says, he quotes a medrash in Chazal, a medrash in Koheles Rabbah, B'shah shebara HaKadosh Baruch Hu es Adam HaRishon. When Hashem created Adam HaRishon, Notlo v'achziro al kol ilane gan Eden v'amrlo. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took Adam HaRishon for a tour amongst all of the trees of Gan Eden, and he said to him, Re'ei ma'asai kama noim u'mishubachim heim. See my creations, how beautiful, how magnificent they are. V'chomash shebarasi b'shvil chabarasi. And the HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Adam, whatever I created for you. Tein datcha shelo tikalkel v'tachrev es olami. Please, don't destroy my world. Please don't destroy my world. Takes him on a tour of all the trees of Gan Eden. I created this all for you. Oh, it's all yours. Please, tein datcha shelo tikalkel v'tachrev es olami. Please, to pay heed, take care. Don't destroy my world. Shim tikalkel in mishiyitakin acharecha. Because if you destroy the world, there's no one left to fix it. And I thought it's so amazing. See here, Rav Cook in the introduction to Oros HaTshuva, right? So that the first thing that Kadosh Baruch Hu does to Adam HaRishon is takes him on a tour of the trees of Gan Eden. And I say, what's today's daf? Pre-eitz hadar. Pre-eitz hadar, right? On Rav Cook's yard site. So the first line of the daf, pre-eitz hadar, and perhaps based on Rav Cook, that pasuk itself even has a different meaning. What does it mean pre-eitz hadar? So actually, we're going to go through a 3 machlokes as to how to interpret the pasuk. But perhaps on a most basic, life level, what does the Kadosh Baruch Hu tell us? Take the pre-eitz, right? Take the fruits of the tree and make it hadar. Do something beautiful with it. The pri ha'etz represents the gashmius, represents the materialism in life. See, the beauty of Judaism is that we are not an ascetic religion. We do not believe that the pathway to God is paved by swearing off everything physical and material. Fakir, just the opposite. What's the first thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does with Adam when he comes into this world? He doesn't give him a Gemara. He doesn't say, here, learn the daf. Right? The first thing he goes ahead and he does with Adam Arishon is, let me show you the Gashmias. Let me show you the Gashmias. The Gashmias is here for you. It's here for you. But you have to do something meaningful with it. You have to do something purposeful with it. You have to use it to build the world, not to destroy the world. So what do we do? What do we do on Yom Tov of Sukkot, which is Yom Tov of the harvest season? We take the fruit, we take all these items, the pre-eitz hadar. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, what's your job in life? Take the pre-eitz, take the fruits of the tree, take the gashmios, take the beauty, take the bounty, and hadar, do something beautiful with it. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us gashmios in life, whether we have a lot or we have a little, our divine mandate and our divine mission is to somehow use it to make the world a little bit better. An incredible Yisod of Kuk's Neshama should have an aliyah, and his Torah should continue to inspire us for many generations. But let's read that. Let us go back to Turn Rabbanon. Pre-eitz hadar. Eitz shetam itzu pir yoshava. So what's unique about the esrog is the esrog ultimately, again, is the tree, where the tree and the fruit taste the same. Havi omer ze esrog. And this is the esrog. So pre-eitz hadar. So the Gemara is saying the drush over here is the pre and the eitz are both hadar. The pre and the eitz both taste the same. So the Gemara says ve'ima palpal, and Reb says is very interesting because what that means is the esrog tree is the only tree which wasn't impacted by the earth's decision to quote unquote disobey HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because remember again, like we saw, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the fruit trees, he wanted it to be the fruit and the trees would taste the same. Rashi HaKadosh says, "Va'aretz lo asa sakain." The earth did not comply, but it appears that the esrog tree did. Okay, different discussion. I ve'im palpalin. I will say palpalin we normally translate as peppers. Here, really, what it really means is peppercorns. So perhaps again it refers to peppercorns because apparently again peppercorns also taste the same as the tree they grow on. Kedesanya, Hay Rabbi Meir Omer Mashma Shenemar Unitas. The pasuk over here quoting by Arla. Unitatem kol eitz ma'achol va'araltem arlaso espirio shalosh shanim yelach. This is the mitzvah of Arla. Plant something for the first 3 years. You don't partake of it. So the Gemara says, "Unitatem kol eitz inio de'ashu eitz ma'achol." So we'll say, obviously, if we're talking about a tree that produces fruit and you can't eat it for the first 3 years, we obviously know that it's an eitz ma'achol. Ma tamaloma eitz ma'achol. Why does the Torah have to identify the tree as a tree which produces food? Eitz shetam eitzu upirio shava. Because the Torah is also making reference to the type of tree where the tree and the fruit both have the same taste. Have omer ze palpalin, and I can say, what's the example of a tree which produces something where the item it produces, what we call the pre, and the tree taste the same? Ze palpalin. This refers to peppercorns. Lamdecha shapalpalin chayavin ba'arla. So that teaches me two things. Number one, that peppercorns are chayiv in arla. Chayiv in arla. Interesting idea. Look at Rashi. Rashi says chayavin ba'arla. Apparently, peppercorns grow on a very low tree. You might have thought that tree really is much more like a bush, and therefore, again, maybe peppercorns are much more treated like vegetables than fruit. Kamashmala know that they're treated like fruit and therefore subject to arla. Good, that's lesson number one. And lesson number two, this is very interesting. The Ein Eretz Yisrael Chaseira Klum. And ultimately, again, also to teach me that Eretz Yisrael lacks nothing. Eretz Yisrael lacks nothing. Shneimar lo sechsar kol ba. Right? You will lack for nothing in Eretz Yisrael. I will say this is an interesting statement, right? You see, Eretz Yisrael lacks nothing because of peppercorns. Because the peppercorns taste like peppercorns and the tree tastes like peppercorns. Incredible. Mamish, it's a land. They should put that on the tourism ministry website. You know, we have everything, including peppercorns that taste like trees, trees that taste like peppercorns. What's the pshat? What's the pshat? I will say, the beauty in Eretz Yisrael and the power of Eretz Yisrael is the ability to see the Ribono Shel Olam manifest in every single detail, even the smallest details of life. The truth is, we should be able to see that everywhere. That's the job of a Jew, to see the presence of the Ribono Shel Olam in anything and everything. But human nature is such that often we only see HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the big things in life, not in the little things. The power of Eretz Yisrael is that by definition, because Eretz Yisrael as a land is so reliant on HaKadosh Baruch Hu for everything, from rain to safety and security, there is no way for that land to exist without HaKadosh Baruch Hu. By definition, we're more in tune with seeing the little things there. So when you see a tree and that produces fruit, and the fruit tastes like the tree, so remember again, first of all, it's very reminiscent of Gan Eden, and also reminiscent or really a manifestation of the Hashkachas Habore. When you see those little things, especially in Eretz Yisrael, you realize, wow, this is a land that lacks nothing, because it is a land that is guided by the providence of the Ribono Shalom. It's incredible. So the Gemara says, so why not peppercorns? Maybe Pri Eitz Hadar means peppercorns. Hasa Mishum D'Lo Efshar. I'll tell you why Pri Eitz Hadar can't mean peppercorns, because it's not possible. What are you going to do? Hechi Navid, Ninkot Chada, Lo Minkran Likichasa. What are you going to do? You're going to take one peppercorn? Well, that's too small. They're tiny, right? You're not even, the act of taking it will not be recognizable. Ninkot Shrei Otlasa. Take 2 or 3. Echad Amrachmana V'lo Shnaim U'Shlosha. The Torah says Pri Eitz Hadar, which is singular, which means you're only supposed to take 1, not 3. Therefore, Hilchach Lo Efshar. Therefore, again, the Gemara says Pri Eitz Hadar, even though the peppercorn might actually satisfy the criteria of being a Pri Eitz Hadar, meaning a Pri that tastes the same as the tree tastes the same as the Pri. Ultimately, again, you can't satisfy them with the peppercorn. Fine. So we'll say that's the first drasha, Pri Eitz Hadar. Pri Eitz Hadar means the type of Pri where the Pri and the tree share the same taste. Rabbi says, Al Tikri Hadar Ela Hadir. Very interesting. Don't vocalize it as Hadar, rather as a Hadir. Rabbi will say Hadir. Dir is what? Dir is a pen where you keep animals. Right? A pen where you keep animals. Why? What does that do? Just like in a pen where you keep animals, you have small animals, big animals, complete animals, blemished animals. On the esrog tree, we'll say, what do you have? You've got all kinds of esrogim. Big esrogim, small esrogim, blemished esrogim, whole esrogim. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Look on an apple tree, you'll find the same thing: big apples, small apples, blemished apples, whole apples. We'll say elahachi kamer. This is what it means to say. Ad sheboin kitanim adayim gidolim kaimer. We'll say, if you remember again, we spoke about this 2 days ago. One of the unique aspects of the esrog tree, which we're going to discuss in just a moment, is esrogim remain on the tree until when? Until when? Until they're picked off. Which means that you can have big esrogim from this year, and you leave them on the tree, so that next year, when the new crop comes in, there are little new esrogim and old, bigger esrogim. No other tree has that. That's what it means when it says big, little, blemished, unblemished. Ultimately, again, everything living on the tree together from year to year. If you think about it, also such an incredible yesod. What does the esrog represent? The esrog represents the leiv, represents the heart. The tree represents Klal Yisrael, the tree that the esrogim grow on. And to be part of Klal Yisrael, you have to accept the fact there are Gidolim and there are Ketanim, there are Tamimim, there are Ba'alim Mumin. What it means to be a Jew is to be able to get along and to forge relationships with all different kinds of people. What happens all too often in life is, I just want to be on a tree with esrogim who look like me, smell like me, develop like me. I don't want yellow, I don't want green, I just want everyone who's like me. And I will say this is the biggest problem in Jewish community in general, which is we do this in every way. We only want to go to shul with people who look like us, practice like us, believe like us. That's it. They got to be just like me, just like me. Well, every area of Jewish life becomes like this, so siloed, and only wanting to be exactly with people who I can exactly identify with. Well, part of the beauty of Klal Yisrael is there's a lot of different esrogim on the tree, a lot of different esrogim. And do you know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose the esrog over every other fruit? Because it's the only fruit that can live on the tree with other esrogim that don't look like it. That are bigger, that are smaller, that are blemished, that are whole, because that's the beauty of being a Jew. It means being part of a nation. It's easy to be part of something when everyone's like you. That's not a chiddush, that's not an accomplishment. But to be part of a nation where the other esrogim don't look like you, don't smell like you, aren't the same color as you, right? Are very different than you, and yet you still live on the same tree, you still are part of the same entity. That's an accomplishment. Rabbi Yavo says, Al tikri hadar ella davar shedar bi'ilan mishal shalom. Both say this we spoke about beforehand, which kind of is similar to the previous drasha as well. That what's pre-eitz hadar, it's a pre that lives on the tree from year to year. Ben Azai says, Al tikri hadar ella idur. It's very interesting. Don't read it as hadar, rather read it as idur. What does idur mean? Shekim balashon yavani korin lemayim idur. Very interesting. In Greek, the word for water is idur. Ve'ezuhu shagada alamayim. What's an example of something that grows by the water? Heavy omer ze esrog. That's esrog. Good. Both say so. All different drashas for pre-eitz hadar. Both say it is interesting. You think to yourself, you see this whole Gemara, and you say to yourself, right? What's the conclusion you come to? Right? Why don't you just say esrog? Right? Why don't you just say esrog? So let's say, so remember, the Maral discusses, Maral asks, he says, why didn't the Torah put nekudos? Why don't we have nekudos in the Torah? Right? For Bali Kriya, it would make life so much easier. By the way, we cut down on so much ambiguity and so many drushes is vocalized like this. Just put nekudos. The Maral says, Kadosh Baruch Hu purposely did not want vowels. Because when you have vowels, you can only read the word one way. Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted us to understand the Torah is multifaceted and could be understood in so many different ways. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have said esrog. Of course he could have said esrog. Right? He could have also said citron. He could have also put pictures in the Torah, which would have been even better. Right? Then you would have known exactly what he was talking about. Right? But at the end of the day, he wanted us to darshan. He wants us to understand, because look how many lessons you glean. If it would have just said esrog, esrog just means esrog. But now pre-eitz hadar, look at all of these beautiful life lessons that I learned. Kadosh Baruch Hu gives us the opportunity to develop and learn at every turn. If he would just spoon feed us everything, there's no grappling, there's no deeper level of comprehension. The ambiguity is by design, because it allows us to grow. The Gemara goes back there. So, shal asher v'shal erani dachas pas. So you can't use an answer of an asher erani dachas. We did this already. Mai taimo kevan de la sreifa kai kesuse mechsa shurei. Like we said before, since you have to burn Avodah Zarah and Asherah, you have to burn the possessions of an erani dachas. It's as if the esrog lacks the requisite shear. Good. Shel arla pasal. This is very interesting. Why can't you use an esrog of arla? This is incredible. My taimo pligi bar Rabbi Chia bar Abba Rabbi Asi. Rabbi Chia bar Abba Rabbi Asi disagreed. Chad amar lefi she'in ba heter achila. The chad amar lefi she'in ba din mamon. Both say this is fascinating. The machlokes is like this. Why can't you use an esrog of arla? So one opinion said, because you're not allowed to eat it. And the Torah says, ulakachtem lachem. The way we define lachem, how do you define lachem? So we define lachem as ownership. What's the greatest manifestation of ownership? At least by a fruit. That what? You could eat it. Therefore, because you can't eat arla, therefore by definition, it is lacking in lachem. The second opinion says, lefi she'in badin mamon. It has no monetary value. Since it is aser ba'ana, it's not shaveh prut. It's not even worth a penny. Again, both say same idea. It's only considered to be lachem yours if it has some type of financial value. But if it has no value, then it's not yours. So again, both are agreeing that the problem with an esrog of arla is that it doesn't satisfy the criteria of lachem. The machlokis is it not lachem because I can't eat it, or is it not lachem because I can't really financially own it? So the Gemara says, Kasaka daite, you would have thought, man de boy heter achila lo boy din mamin, uman de boy din mamin lo boy heter achila. Now you both say, the assumption is when you see machlokes that each side is mutually exclusive of the other. So the one who requires heter achila doesn't require din mamin. The one who requires din mamin doesn't require heter achila. Yet, interestingly enough, Tanan, shal truma tmeya psula. You can't use an esrog of truma tmeya. So I understand if you hold that in order for an esrog to be lachem, you have to be able to eat it. I understand why you can't use an esrog of truma tmeya. Why not? Why not? Can't eat truma tmeya. But remember again, if you hold that lachem just means you have to have financial ownership, but say, can you have financial ownership over truma tmeya? And the answer is yes. How is that manifest? If you're a Kohen and you have truma tmeya, what can you do? You can use it for fuel to heat your fire underneath your food. So truma tmeya doesn't have heter achila, but does have din mammon, to which the Gemara says, you're right. Everyone agrees that in order to satisfy the criteria of lachem, you have to technically be able to eat your esrog. Interesting, right? In order to satisfy the criteria of lachem, you have to be able to eat it. Ki pligi, so where's the machlokes? Bedin mammon. Do you also have to possess financial ownership as well? Now, both say, now when we say possess financial ownership, what that means is, does the esrog have to be an item of value or not, which you could possess financially? Mar sabar heter achila ba'inon din mammon lo ba'inon. One opinion holds all you need is heter achila, you don't need din mammon. Umar sabar din mammon nami ba'inon. The other opinion will say no, you also need din mammon. So we'll say this is really fascinating. So what comes out according to the Gemara over here is everyone agrees that in order to satisfy the criteria of ulakachtam lochem, for it to be yours, in order for it to be yours, it has to be something you can eat. If you are not allowed to take a bite out of it, then it does not belong to you. The shaila is, in addition to heter achila, do you also have to possess financial ownership? And in order to possess financial ownership, it has to have value, at least a shaveh pruta. So the question is that additional level of ownership, what we call again din mammon, is that required or not? That's the machlokes. So the Gemara says, Ika benayo, what's the good nafkamina? So the Gemara says, my benayo, Ika benayo, ma'aser sheni should be Yerushalayim. Both says very interesting. Rabbi Meir. The nafkamina would be the following case: ma'aser sheni in Yerushalayim, according to Rabbi Meir. Now, both we're going to see in just a moment that remember, ma'aser sheni is yours to eat. You just have to eat it where? In Yerushalayim. Now, Rabbi Meir holds, according to Rabbi Meir, ma'aser sheni in Yerushalayim is mamon gavo. We'll see this machlokes in just a moment. He holds Ma'aser Sheni doesn't belong to you. Ma'aser Sheni is hektish. The fact that you're allowed to eat it, right, is no different. The Kohen is also permitted to eat karbanos. Yet again, it still has a sacrificial identity. So Ma'aser Sheni Rabbi Meir holds is mamon gavoa, belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So watch this. If you hold that all you need for the esrog to be yours is the ability to eat it, so again, Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim, even according to Rabbi Meir, is usable. Why? You could eat it. However, the Mandamar Lefi She'en din mammon, Ma'aser Sheni mammon gavoahu. But according to the opinion who holds that heter achila is not enough, it also what? You have to have financial ownership. Well, according to Rabbi Meir, you could not use an esrog of Ma'aser Sheni, because according to Rabbi Meir, even an esrog of Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim does not belong to you. It is still considered to be mammon gavoa. It would appear to be that it's Rabbi Asi who holds that in addition to heter achila, you also need din mammon. The Rabbi Asi esrog shel ma'aser sheni div Rabbi Meir ein adam yotzei yedei chavas b'yamtiv. So, because Rabbi Asi said as follows: an esrog of ma'aser sheni that you're using in Yerushalayim, according to Rabbi Meir, a person cannot discharge his obligation, because according to Rabbi Meir, even though you could eat it, you don't own it. The divrei chachamim. Adam yotze ba yedei chavasa b'yamta. But according to the Chachamim, you can go ahead and use an esrog of Ma'aser Sheni. Why? Because according to the Chachamim, Ma'aser Sheni is mamon hedyot. It belongs to you. It belongs to you. You just have to go ahead and eat it in Yerushalayim tistayim. So we'll say, so this is the fundamental machlokes. It's a really riveting machlokes if you think about it. Everyone agrees we need lachem. And everyone is agreeing that lachem means, the ikar of lachem is heter achila. That you could technically eat this esrog if you wanted to. The shaila, the machlokas is, in addition to heter achila, do you also need din mammon? Do you also need financial ownership over the esrog? Good, let's go weiter. Gufa, Rabbi Asi, esrog shel ma'aser sheni l'divrei Rabbi Meir, ein adam yotzei yedei chavas b'yamtiv, l'divrei chachamim, adam yotzei yedei chavas b'yamtiv. So I'll say this is really fair. You could not use an esrog of Ma'aser Sheni for your mitzvah. Why not? Because according to Rabbi Meir, or I should say according to Rabbi Asi's understanding of Rabbi Meir, it's not enough to be able to eat the esrog. You have to have financial ownership. And Rabbi Meir holds that Ma'aser Sheni is mamon gavoa. It belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not to you. The Chachamim, on the other hand, disagree. The Chachamim say, no, Ma'aser Sheni is mamon hedyot. It belongs to you. It belongs to you. And therefore, you could use an esrog of Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim on Yom Tiv. But I'll say furthermore, listen to this. This is pretty wild. The Gemara says, matzah shel Ma'aser Sheni. What about if you made matzah of Meiser Sheni. L'divrei Rabbi Meir, ein adam yotzei ba yedei chavasu ha'Pesach. According to Rabbi Meir, you could not fulfill your mitzvah da'oraisa of matzah on the first night of Pesach with matzah of Meiser Sheni. We'll see what that is. L'divrei Chachamim, adam yotzei ba yedei chavasu ha'Pesach. According to the Chachamim, you can fulfill your mitzvah of matzah with matzah of Meiser Sheni. Isa shal Meiser Sheni. What about a dough of Meiser Sheni? L'divrei Rabbi Meir, p'tura min ha'chala. According to Rabbi Meir, ultimately it's pata from challah, which is the portion to the Kohen. L'divrei Chachamim chayav b'challah. According to the Chachamim, ultimately again it is chayiv in challah. Maskif l'Rav Papa. So we'll say, let's analyze this. So 3 cases, right? Esrig, matzah, challah. In all of these cases, Rabbi Meir is saying Meiser Sheni doesn't belong to you. Because Meiser Sheni doesn't belong to you, you don't have financial ownership, therefore you can't use it for esrig, right? You can't use it for matzah, and it's not going to be chayiv in challah. The Chacham disagree on all 3 counts. Let's analyze this. So Maskil Rav Papa, Bishlama Isa Ksiv Reishes Ariso Sechem. Esrig Nami Ksiv Lochem Mishalochem. I understand Rabbi Meir's Shita by challah and by esrig. Because by challah, Rabbi say, what's the mitzvah? What's the mitzvah? To separate challah from what? From what? From your dough. From your dough. Your dough means what? Your dough means what? You own the dough. Rabbi Meir says, you don't own Meiser Sheni. It belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I understand why I can't separate a challah from dough of Meiser Sheni. I also understand why I can't use an esrog of Meiser Sheni. Why not? What does the Torah say? Ulakachtem lachem. It has to be yours. And the esrog of Meiser Sheni is not yours. So I understand Rabbi Meir's shit in those cases. Ela matzah, miksiv matzaschem. But matzah, who says you have to own your matzah? Right? Mehechatei said there's a din of financial ownership by your matzah. Amra bar Shmuel v'Tamar Rav Yemer bar Shamya asya lechem. Rabbi Meir has an interesting gezer shava of lechem. Ksiv hach, it says over here by matzah, lechem oni, the bread of affliction. Uksiv hasam amud beis v'haya ba'ach lechem mi lechem haaretz. The pasuk says, it will say by challah, it'll be when you go and eat from the bread of the land. Just like by challah, it has to be your dough, not a dough of Meiser Sheni. Afkan mishalachem velo shal Meiser. Very interesting. Right? Meir will say so too, but this gzer shava from matzah to Meiser Sheni, from matzah to challah. Interesting, right? Interesting gzer shava, right? From matzah to challah. Ultimately teaching you that just like challah, you only take challah from a dough that's yours, so to matzah, you can only fulfill the matzah with matzah that belongs to you in a financial capacity. So I will say, Lema Misayele. Let's bring a support to this. Isa Shal Meiser Sheni. Meir says that a dough, a Meiser Sheni dough is parted from challah, because you're only obligated to take challah from dough which belongs to you, not which belongs to Gavod. Meir. The Chacham say no, chayav es bechallah, it's chayav in challah. So say that this supports what we said before. So what do you mean it supports? He. It's the same thing. You're just restating what we just said exactly before. Ella midibaha pligi baha nami pligi. Rather, what we're saying is like this: the same way that they disagree over here in this case of challah, they'll also disagree in the other aforementioned cases as well. O dilma shiny isa da amrikra ariso sechem trei zimni. Or maybe not. Maybe the machlokes is only by challah, because the Torah says ariso sechem, your dough twice, which seems to indicate a heightened level of ownership necessary in order to separate a challah. So we'll say bottom line, this machlokes, there is a yesodistic machlokes, Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim about Meiser Sheni. That's what's driving all of this. Does Meiser Sheni belong to you, the Yisrael, or not? Rabbi Meir says, no, it does not belong to you. It belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You can eat it. You're allowed to eat it in Yerushalayim, but it does not belong to you. The Chacham say, no, it does belong to me. Nafkamina, 3 areas, right? Nafkamina, number 1, can you use esrog of Meiser Sheni? Rabbi Meir will say no. Chachamim say yes. Number 2, can you use matzah of Meiser Sheni? Rabbi Meir says no. Chachamim say yes. And number 3, do you have to separate out challah from a dough of Meiser Sheni? Rabbi Meir says no. Chachamim say yes. Because Rabbi Meir will say in esrog, challah, and matzah, you need to have ownership. Now, that point could be contested, especially in matzah, but Lamaisa therefore says you can't use Meiser Sheni. So how do we paskin? We paskin like the Rabban paskin like the Chachamim, namely, that Allah Meiser Sheni is considered to be yours. It's considered to be yours. It is your property. It is your possession. But halacha l'maisa, again, there's a caveat. There's a limitation on how you could consume it, which is in Yerushalayim, but it's not mamon gavo, which means that halacha l'maisa, if you used an esrog of meiser sheni, you're yotze. Now we're going to see, we don't want you to use an esrog of meiser sheni for a different reason, but technically speaking, it is yours, and halacha l'maisa, it can be used. Just keep in mind the other existing machlokes, which is how do we define shalachem? Is shalachem just, everyone will agree that what do you need for shalachem? What do you need? Heter achila, right? Ownership, which is manifest in heter achila. The shaila is, in addition to that, do you need din mamon or not? That's going to be an ongoing machlokes. Let's go weiter. Says the Gemara, shal truma tmei psula. You can't use an esrog of truma tmei. Now we understand why not, Rabosai, to less beheter achila, because you can't eat it. And remember, right now where we're holding in the Gemara is everyone agrees that the most basic manifestation of lachem ownership is the ability to eat your esrog. If you can't eat it, you don't own it. So therefore, because truma tmei cannot be consumed under any circumstance, no heter achila, no ownership, can't use it. V'shal truma Torah lo yitol. This is very interesting. You should not take an esrog. Fine. What about truma Torah? Now, Bosai, based on this, should you be able to use an esrog of truma tahora? What would you say? If you're a Kohen, right? If you're a Kohen, right? It depends. If you're a Kohen, there's a heter achila, so you should be permitted to go ahead and use it. So pligi bar Rabbi Aaron Rabbi Asi, but yeah, you're not allowed to. The Mishnah says you're not allowed to use it. Why not? This is fascinating. So pligi bar Rabbi Aaron Rabbi Asi, chad amram v'neishu machshira. But say, listen to this. Rashi says something absolutely amazing. We're going to see this on Daf Mem Beis. But say it used to be that when they would finish with the lulavim and esrogim, when you would finish with lulav and esrog on Yom Tov Day, what would you do? You would put it in a vase of water. They put it in a vase of water. That's what they would do, which beautiful. Again, we'll discuss this because there are other halachic implications of that as well. What's the problem? An esrog is ochel. What happens when ochel comes in contact with one of the 7 liquids? It's huchshar lekabel tuma. If you're using an esrog of truma, what you've just done is you've made it huchshar lekabel tuma, which means that you've potentially set up a situation of making truma temeah. That's a major no-no. We have an obligation to safeguard the sanctity of truma, and therefore, again, the Gemara says over here, we don't use truma Torah, even though technically speaking, it satisfies the edibility threshold, or it has the edibility threshold, because they would always put their love and etzrogim in water. You're making it huchshar lekabel tuma. The chadamar mipnei shemafsida. The other opinion said as follows: that what happens, you're going to cause the truma to be diminished. Because what happens over the course of Yom Tiv? Your hands are constantly on the esrog. So sometimes it could cause the peel to become diminished, the fruit itself to become diminished, or it could cause the fruit to become a bit dirtier. Rashi's machshir becomes blacker. So you're causing the diminution of truma, which is also prohibited. The Torah says in these situations, there's a mitzvah of mishmeres trumasi. You're supposed to take care of truma. So the Gemara says, "My benayu." So okay, so everyone will agree you can't use an esrog of truma tahora, either because A, you're making it huchshar lekabel tuma, or B, you're actively diminishing it. My benayu will say, what's the machlok? In other words, what's the nafkamina? The practical difference is very interesting. Kigon shekara aleh shem chutz mikli pasach hitzona. The interesting nafkamina would be a case of where you go ahead and designate it as truma, except for the outer peel. As Rabbi says, it's very interesting. Technically speaking, you could designate a fruit of truma, the interior of the fruit of truma, without designating the outer peel. Esrog actually happens to have a very thick outer peel. So listen to this. Let's say you designated the fruit, but not the outer peel. So if it's a din of making huchshar lekabel tuma, it could still receive tuma. But if it's a din of mafsida, causing diminution to truma, the outer peel is not truma, would not really be a problem. Very interesting nafkamina. Good. So l'mandaram here. L'mandaram neshmach shira ika. If you have the concern is that you're making huchshar lekabel tuma, that concern still applies. L'mandaram neshmach sida. But according to the opinion who says that over the course of Yom Tiv, you're going to go ahead and cause a loss or cause the fruit to be diminished, leka. That does not really apply over here in this particular case. Good. V'imnatal kshera. So even though you should not take an esrog of truma, Rabbi say again, truma tahora, even though again it's edible, for one of 2 reasons: either because you're making it huchshar lekabel tuma, or you're going to diminish the pri over the course of Yom Tiv. If you did take it, it's kosher. If you took it, it's kosher. So the Gemara says why? I'll tell you why. B'diavad it's kosher. Why? Because remember, it has heter achila. It has heter achila. You can eat it. And because we'll say, remember, it has edibility, and do you have financial ownership over that esrog? Do you have financial ownership? If you're a Kohen, absolutely yes, right? But they both say, technically speaking, even if you're Yisrael, there is some level of financial ownership that a Yisrael has over Truma. What's level of financial ownership? What we call Tovas Hana. Tovas Hana says you have the ability to give it to the Kohen, whichever Kohen you want, right? I was supposed to say, Kohen comes to my door and says, give me the Truma you have in your silo. I'm a Kohen, you're a Yisrael, give me your Truma. I could say, no, I'm not giving you my Truma. I'm going to give it to a Kohen, but I have the right to choose which Kohen I want to give it to, which is very important because, Emir Hashem, Mehira Yibana HaMikdash. Emir Hashem, Mashiach is going to be here very soon. We're going to have a Beis HaMikdash. For those of us like myself who are, who come from large Kohanic families, but happen to be the one branch of the family, which is the black sheep, the Yisrael black sheep, right? The ability to go ahead and give your truma to whoever you want is very big because you can give it to your relatives, right? You can give it to your friends. You have the right to choose. Okay, not even. So therefore, I will say, don't go ahead and use an esrog of truma tahora. Again, either because you're makshir l'kabel tuma, or because mafsidi, you cause a loss to it over the use of yamtiv. But b'diavad, if you used it, it works because again, it does have heter achila and it does have din mammon. Beautiful. V'shel demai. Right? What happens if you use an esrog of demai? This is machlokes yeshan Beis Hillel. My time with the Beis Hillel. What's Beis Hillel's logic? Kevandi by mafkir lehulin dechasei v'havei ani v'chazilei hashtanami lachen karina. Both say this is great. Both say an ani, a pauper, is permitted to eat demai without retithing it. So Beis Hillel says, do you know why you could use an esrog of demai? Because technically speaking, any person could become a pauper at any moment. I will say that's a general musr in life about how we relate to our wealth. That sometimes our wealth gives us a certain sense of bloated confidence and arrogance. But it is important to know the world is filled with people who have it one moment and lose it all in the next. So Hillel says, literally, you could become an instantaneous ani. Now, how can you become an instantaneous pauper? So he says, this is a bit contrived. What can you do? Be mafkir, right? Be mafkir all of your possessions. I hereby declare all of my possessions ownerless. Boom, you're an instantaneous ani. So if you're an instantaneous ani, bad news is you have nothing. The good news is, what do you have? Demai. Right? We did pick up something. There's a silver lining in everything. Right now, you get to eat demai. So Hillel says, since you can make yourself into an instantaneous ani and partake of demai, therefore, it does satisfy the lachem criteria. Disnan, machilin as aniyim demai v'esachsanyim demai. You can go ahead and give aniyim demai. Achsanya will say, our Rashi says over here are troops, right? Soldiers that are stationed in your home. You can go ahead and feed them demai as well. Bishamai ani lo ochil demai. Bishamai holds that an ani is not permitted to partake of demai. Disnan, ein machilin as aniyim demai v'esachsanyim demai. Va'amar Rav Huna, Tana Bishamai omrim ein machilin as aniyim v'esachsanoim demai. U'beisilo omrim machilin as aniyim demai v'esachsanoim demai. So both say, Salach l'maisa, that's the machlokes. The machlokes is, does demai satisfy the lachem criteria? Beis Hillel says yes, because at any moment you can make yourself into an ani, because you could technically make yourself into an ani, you satisfy the demai criteria, and therefore halacha l'maisa you are permitted to go ahead and use an esrog of demai. Beis Shammai says no, aniyim can't eat demai. Therefore, under any circumstances, that esrog is not yours, and therefore you cannot use it. We'll say one more line, then we'll have to stop. What about Ma'aser Sheni B'Yerushalayim? So also we saw this already. So Leman Da'amar Mepnei Shemachshira Harei Machshira. So we'll say Ma'aser Sheni, the Gemara wants to suggest, is the same issue as Truma. According to the opinion who says the problem is now, because you put it in water, we don't want you to use an esrog of Ma'aser Sheni because you will make it Huchsher Lekabel Tuma. Leman Da'amar Mepnei Shemafsida Harei Mafsid. And according to the opinion, it says we don't want you using it. Why? Because again, over the course of Yontav, you're going to go ahead and handle it. You're going to end up actually diminishing the Ma'aser Sheni, and therefore we would prefer that you not use it over the course of Yontav. Also, we'll stop over here for today. Emir Hashem, pick up with the rest. Again, fascinating sugya. We'll continue to go through the halachas of esrog. We continue tomorrow. We'll say shkoyach.